To get us started, my name is Antoinette Ratcliffe. I am the outside organizing manager here at Initiate Justice. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I will be your co-host tonight alongside Daisy, our statewide advocacy manager, and I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Antoinette. For folks who may not be familiar with who I am, my name is Daisy. I use she, her, and Aya pronouns, and I serve as Initiate Justice's statewide advocacy manager. And excited to bring this resource to you all. In collaboration with our student interns who are part of a partnership that we have with UCLA.
Thank you, Daisy. And we will pass it in a moment. I just want to give a brief overview of what our goals are tonight and what this webinar is about and how it was established. So this webinar was produced by our UCLA Winter 2022 interns or student volunteers in collaboration with a community partnership we have with UCLA's Community Engagement Center. And so our outside membership committee, which is co-led by myself and Daisy, is where the idea for this webinar and others came from. So our outside membership committee is committed to building the skills of our outside membership and organizing base, and also finding new ways to engage new potential members. One way that we'll be fulfilling our commitment to building the skills and knowledge of our existing outside membership and outside organizing base here at Initiate Justice is through skill building webinars. So we met with some of our committee members who are both graduates of our Institute of Impacted Leaders programs and members with Initiate Justice, as well as other community members. And we talked about and we were recommended and given suggestions on topics that we can cover and host skill building webinars, teach-ins, or workshops on to help build some of the fundamental and essential skills that we all need to be effective in our communities, to be effective organizers, advocates, and in our everyday lives as well. And so one of those was communication and support with public speaking as it relates to sharing ideas, sharing information, talking to a group of individuals, presenting some sort of content or slides. And so our UCLA interns, who will introduce themselves in just a moment, have taken the opportunity to put together a very engaging workshop to share some tips and tools for good public speaking skills or communication skills in sharing and presenting information to groups of people. And so one, thank you to our students. Also want to express gratitude for Professor Shalom Stubb, which is the professor of the Engaging LA course, which is a community engagement and social change course at UCLA, which is the course that these students are currently enrolled in and have volunteered to spend some time with our organization, really practically applying some of the things that they learn throughout that course. And so just want to say again, thank you. Welcome everyone who is here. Excited to pass it on to our students to take over and go ahead and get started with you all tonight. Daisy, if there's anything I missed, please feel free. Otherwise, I will go ahead and pass it over to our students to introduce themselves. Emily, Zephania, and Olivia.
Hi, everyone. It is so great to meet you. We're very excited to put this on. We put a lot of time into it, and it's really great to see it come to fruition. So just to introduce ourselves, my name is Zephania. I am a second year at UCLA studying public affairs. And some of my hobbies include crocheting, hanging out with my friends, and trying out new food and looking at new places.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm in my second year at UCLA. I'm a sociology major, and I'm planning on minoring in entrepreneurship and community engagement and social change. And some of the things I like to do outside of school are hiking. I love to bake and cook, and I love reading and going to the beach. So I'm super excited to be with you all tonight. Thanks for having us.
Hi guys, I'm Olivia. I am a senior at UCLA. I'm graduating next quarter. My major is sociology. I am a former member of the UCLA swim and dive team. And some of my hobbies are hiking, going to the beach volleyball, traveling, and fashion.
All right. So now to kick off our public speaking webinar, we're actually going to show you guys a quick little TikTok.
Here's how you become the kind of public speaker where when you start talking, everyone goes quiet and listens and pays attention. Number one, know your audience. Who are they? What do they care about? What interests them? Two, what do you want to get out of what you're saying? What is the end result, the action that you want them to take? What is it that when they walk away, they are compelled to do or not do based on what it is you just said? Lead with stories. People are way more likely to remember you, remember what you said, and connect with it emotionally. Don't beat around the bush. What is it that you're saying? What is your message? There's a lot of talking that it's not driving your case. People will lose attention. Get them hooked right away.
Okay, now that TikTok is a great example of public speaking. She was direct, she was energetic, and you got her point. So those are some topics and some ideas that we're going to expand on some more throughout this presentation. So 3 main things to building a strong argument. You want to know who your audience is. Who are you speaking to? You want to know your point. What are you trying to get across? And finally, you want to know your material. What are you coming into the situation with? So first, let's look at your audience. Knowing your audience is really important because in the end, those are the people you're trying to convince, and those are the people you're trying to make take action. So you want them to be able to believe in what you're saying. You want to connect with them and engage them. And often this means keeping their interest through stories or videos, and we'll explore some more of those later on. To try to connect with the audience and to know where they're coming from, we can ask these questions to ourselves, the ones on the slide. So first off, what background info and context does your audience already have? Do they already know something about what you're speaking of, or are they kind of completely new on this topic? What is important to your audience? How can you relate to them? Is it family that's important to them? Is it money? Is it law? Knowing what's important to them will help you know how to cause them to take action. And then finally, how is your argument directly related to the audience? If something's not personally pertinent, it's often very hard to get people to take action. So, for example, if your audience is parents and you're trying to push for school reform, you'd want to focus on the effects that reform has for their children. You'd want to appeal to their emotions. And what you probably wouldn't want to do is focus on the nitty-gritty of the legislative details. Okay, now once you know your audience, what's the point that you want them to walk away with knowing? And that point is often what we call our thesis. It's this main idea. And often we try to stick to 2 or 3 important ideas, keep it nice and short. You want your thesis to be specific and purposeful. So here's an example. We have our purpose statement, which is what you want your audience to know. I want the County Zoning Commission to understand that locating businesses in bog turtle habitat is a poor choice with a range of negative consequences. That's what you want your audience to know. Now, your thesis statement, what you're actually going to say in your argument and in your presentation, is Bog turtle habitats are sensitive to a variety of activities, but land development is particularly harmful to unstable habitats. The County Zoning Commission should protect bog turtle habitats by choosing to prohibit businesses from locating in these habitats. Now that's a little bit longer than your purpose statement, and it has a little bit more content. But importantly, what it says is it has a why, like why is this important? And it has an action statement, has what do you want your audience to do? Okay, so now we know our audience. We know what main point we want them to walk away with. Now let's flesh out our actual speech, right? So to know your material, it means to know all the evidence that you're walking into this knowing. What do you got to tell them? What's your stories? And often I like to, especially for longer ones, outline it. When you outline your material, you want to keep it very clear. You just have bullet points, you break it down into sections, and you make clear connections. So it's kind of like making yourself a roadmap. So when you stand up there and you speak, you have landmarks that you're bringing yourself along. And it's pretty important that you don't write out your whole speech. This isn't an essay. You want to leave room to improvise, to take in what the audience is giving you back. Okay. And for our final slide on my part, we know how to build an argument. Now, to really connect with our audience, we can add a little bit of pizzazz into our speech. And we can do this by two main ways. We can add personal stories, and we can utilize videos and pictures. Just like the TikTok we did in the beginning of this presentation, video is a really nice way to concisely bring in different opinions into your speaking. And pictures are just great because some people are visual learners, and it gives them something to connect with that isn't just your voice. Now, personal stories. I really, really want to emphasize how important and how powerful your personal stories are as a way of engaging and relating with the audience, but also just to humanize the argument, to connect and show people the true emotions and feelings and passion that goes behind an argument. All right. Now, does anyone have any questions on these last couple of slides about building an argument? Okay, if not, we get to go into our first breakout room of the night. All right, so we're gonna break you guys out into breakout rooms of about 3 to 4 people. And in these breakout rooms, we're gonna have you choose from these 3 topics. 1, why use people-centered language? 2, why should you know who your legislators are? And 3, why is it important for system-impacted people to share their story? Choose just one of these topics, and then take some time within your groups to brainstorm some ideas and formulate an argument using these 3 steps. Figure out who your audience is, what your main point you'd want them to know, and jot down some quick ideas for an outline, and then take some time to share and get feedback. All right, so it looks like breakout rooms are open. Go ahead and join those.
All right, welcome back. Hopefully the breakout rooms went well for everyone. If you had any issues or anything, let us know in the chat because we are going to do breakout rooms one more time later on in the meeting. But yeah, we're going to move on now to talking about language and how we speak, and specifically about using people-centered language. So before I address this slide, I want to try a little exercise before we begin. And so one thing I found helpful in understanding this is thinking back to a time around like 10 years ago in your life and thinking about who you were at that point in your life. So I'm going to give everyone just a quick moment to think about one word or a few words that kind of describe who you were 10 years ago. And if you feel comfortable, you can put that word in the chat. Otherwise, you can just think about it. And so, yeah, just think about that for a few minutes. Feel free to paste it in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just give you a moment.
Excuse me, you said think about where we were 10 years ago?
Yes. So a word or a few words that kind of describe how you would identify yourself, or like some words that kind of are who define you as a person 10 years ago. Okay, I'm seeing a few people. Thank you. Okay, so now I want to ask you, does that word accurately describe who you are today? So I know for me, 10 years ago, I would have been 10 years old. So that means I was a child, right? I was unable to make decisions for myself. And that young girl is not the same person that I am today. There's definitely some similarities, but I've changed a lot, right? So this is just something to think about when remembering that our identities are not stuck in this one period of time in our life or defined by one thing or some people in our life. All of our experiences help shape who we are, but it's not all that we are. So especially when addressing more serious issues such as incarceration, it's important to be aware of the way we speak about people who have been impacted. So using people-centered language is a way of putting their personhood ahead of the circumstances or identities that we've kind of assigned, that society has kind of assigned them. So in general, when we speak about people in a negative light, it affects the way that we think and we act. So even with things as simple as gossiping about someone or just, saying mean things about another person, that has a physical manifestation in our bodies, and it can affect our mood, the perception we have of ourselves and others, and it can have a negative effect on our physical and mental well-being. And so this is kind of showing the importance of when we change our language, it affects the public sentiment around people, around ideas, around groups. And so specifically around mass incarceration, it's really important to be changing our language and teaching other people how to do the same so that we can begin to have these conversations and start bringing people into the right direction of making real and effective change that we all want to see. So in this next slide here, we can see some examples of ways we can shift our language. And these phrases are just suggestions, and they're open to lots of different perspectives and can change based on how someone wants to be referred to themselves. So these are just some examples that I'll give you. So instead of referring to someone as a prisoner or a felon, we can say it's someone who is incarcerated, or someone who is formerly incarcerated, someone who is currently on parole. Instead of saying that they're a juvenile delinquent, or same thing goes for someone who has immigrated. They're not an immigrant or an alien, but they are just a person, and that is part of their circumstance. So as a person who's not been directly impacted by incarceration, it can feel uncomfortable trying to explain to someone who has why this is relevant. It can be very easy to think of the criminal justice system as an out of sight, out of mind issue for people who haven't experienced it themselves. Most people who don't know someone who is or has been incarcerated have a warped view of the people who make up the prison system. Social media, news outlets all paint these pictures of kind of like an animalistic, dehumanizing view that takes away the identity of that an incarcerated person has as a son or a daughter, a father or a mother. And so while I don't have the same experiences, I am responsible as an ally to understand for myself and help other people who haven't been impacted to understand. So I am going to hand it over to Richard, and we can go to the next slide here, who is going to give a more personal perspective on why person-centered language is important to him. So Richard, I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'll just say a few words to introduce you. Richard is a dynamic public speaker and expert communicator with advanced leadership, coaching, and communication certifications. He was incarcerated for 21 years and spoke before the California State Legislative Assembly Public Safety Committee in 2019, just days after being released, advocating for criminal justice reform laws and leading in the efforts for the right to vote for those on parole, which California voters passed. So Richard, thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite, Initiate Justice, and also UCLA. I'm 44 years old. I'm a couple classes away from my MBA, so still in school. One of my goals is to get that doctorate by the age of 50. So I've kind of looked at school as a way of being, as a lifestyle. I love to learn, so it's continuous learning. It's not a burden, So, but yeah, like she said, my name is Richard Mireles, and if you want to, you could take the picture off of the screen. We can go full group. It's okay with me. There we go. Yeah, sure. Let me see. Go gallery here. There we go. I can see everybody. Yeah, I'm a graduate of the Institute of Impacted Leaders, former board member of Initiate Justice. I was a part of, I was going to save it as a little surprise that I was incarcerated, but I'm one of the original inside members of Initiate Justice back in the days when we were having a conversation about could this organization grow, not only grow, but pass laws or lead the efforts to pass laws like those on parole, having the opportunity to vote. And even then, I'm sad to admit that I thought it'll never happen, right? But it did. Today, I'm the director of communications at Crop Organization. I manage our website, host 13 social media channels, and host the Prison Post podcast. So if anybody wants to check out the podcast, it's on YouTube and any of your favorite podcasting networks. I was sentenced to 25 years to life at the age of 20. I spent over half of my life in prison. I got out at 41. And 2 days later, I called Taina Vargas, who's the co-founder of Initiate Justice. We got on a call and it was congratulations and welcome home. And within about 20 minutes, she was like, hey, by the way, we're going to be at the Capitol in 10 more days. And we'd love to have you speak before the Public Safety Committee for AB 965, which would incentivize time credits for those serving life sentences. And a lot of my brothers and sisters are still incarcerated. And I know that a lot of them don't need to be there anymore. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And, something awesome happened. She flew out a day before and she came to the transitional house that I was at, and we sat at a desk and wrote our speeches for the next day. So being somebody who was had a bachelor's at the time, the president of Toastmasters on the inside, and had given probably over 1,000 speeches on the inside, I definitely wanted to write my own speech. And then after she wrote her own speech, but I shared mine with hers right afterwards. And she started marking up my paper, my speech for the next day. And I had the word inmate in there multiple times to describe myself. And she was the first one to have the conversation with me about using people-centered language. And she talked to me about how not using that kind of language dehumanizes people. And I had never heard that before. This was the first time I heard that. And at the time I thought, well, it's not really a big deal. Everybody does it. If you watch the news at night, inmates this, inmates that, felons this, and it's just everywhere, right? And she talked to me about it that night. I was thinking about it, and my mind's like a Rolodex of quotes and stories and things like that. So the Rolodex started flipping to all these stories of experiences I had while I was incarcerated, of feeling dehumanized, of feeling subhuman. Not only me, but my incarcerated brothers in there. Almost the whole experience was like that. I think from correctional officers, it's a generalization, but from my experience, probably 2 out of 10 treat us as real human beings with dignity. I think the biggest experience that I would share with you about was after 21 years going to the parole board and being found suitable, which meant that I would be able to go home in about 5 months. And I was so excited because only 2% of people are found suitable for parole at their first hearing. And if we get denied, it's a 3-year, 5-year, 7, 10, or 15-year denial. And I have friends who've gotten those 15-year denials after 20 years. So I was excited that I was part of the 2% to go home to my family, not really home, but to be in freedom, to go to a transitional house, which was mandatory for me. Maybe even because some of the labels that they put on us, they think that we need those places instead of to go home. But I got out of there excited, and being at Soledad Prison for 18 years and 2 months, I knew some COs that were there for probably 10 or 12 years. And, not only did I want to tell my friends, but there were some of them that I worked for. I was a college clerk, and there was this one I knew for a long time. I probably talked to 8 or 10 of them. And I expected them to be like, right on, man, congratulations, go on home, and you earned it, something positive. But that wasn't the case. There was almost like this film over their eyes, or this, there was no facial expression. There was no facial expression with any excitement. One person said, well, I hope you stay out of trouble. Well, I didn't have a write-up in there for 21 years. I've been staying out of trouble. I haven't been in trouble since I was 20 years old. And here I am, 41. And in his mind, I'm still trouble. And he hoped that I would stay out of trouble. And so I realized the effects that it had on the officers. And they're trained that way, right? They're trained to see us as, this is once a criminal, always a criminal. This is a felon. This is a dangerous person. He'll always be a dangerous person. And, they're trained to see us as menaces to society and to never be trusted. And so imagine getting that training and the effects of that training, the effects on their attitude, their way of being, the way they talk to us. And that creates that us versus them. When they go out in the real world in society, outside of the prison, what do they experience? They experience normal people, right? But there's plenty of people out here who need a rehabilitation or transformation, just like we do, or they're doing criminal acts, but they haven't been caught. But to them, the majority, from my experience, we were something that needed to be taken out of the world forever. So that experience I had was of them thinking like, that doesn't make sense. This is your home. You belong here. And, what I wanted to tell them was, eventually I came to have compassion and empathy for them. And that's what I would encourage you to do as well. For those who don't use people-centered language and tend to dehumanize with the way they talk about people, I think that it's out of their awareness for the most part. Now, if you bring it into their awareness and they still continue on, well, then, it might be just an attitude of being uncaring. I don't give a F, So, but what I'm telling you is not foreign to you. You mentioned, Emily, that, 10 years ago, you were 10 years old. Well, that means a few years ago, you're in high school, and where labels are everywhere. And when you use labels, you think that person, by one thing that they did, that's their identity. A guy in my day, a guy dated a lot of girls, and, he was a player. And not saying that it's right, but you wear that label. And then maybe he thinks, well, yeah, that's who I am. And he continues to be abusive in relationships, or or act as a liar or manipulator. And the same thing for women, right? If they're date, several guys, you could think of the names that they're called, and nobody likes the effects of being identified in that way, because that's not who I am. It's not who I am. I wouldn't identify myself in that way. And I certainly don't like for other people to identify me in that way. I love what you said earlier. I'm a son, I'm a grandson, I'm a brother. And there's plenty of other qualities that I have that will describe who I am and who I'm committed to being in this world. Sure. In the matter of my first time committing felonies that I was caught for, a crime that lasted no longer than 5 minutes. It's horrible. I regret it. I have remorse. I've been able to make amends to the person that I harmed and attempted to murder. And I don't like what I did, but it's not who I am. Prison was my location. It's where I was, but it wasn't who I am. But I noticed that even me and my friends being called that so long. He's an inmate. Let me introduce you to this good inmate right here. This is not a bad inmate anymore. He's a good inmate. And I brought that perspective with me out here and thought of myself in that way. And if I think of myself as an inmate, somebody who is a criminal will always be a criminal, what type of possibilities and opportunities will open up for me in my future? I'll probably have a very limited ceiling in my own mind of who I can be and what I can do, right? Maybe I could be a chef or on a construction crew, right? I definitely wouldn't be able to manage a website or social media channels or study digital marketing or host my own podcast. I'm an inmate. How could I ever do that? Right. But when we lift labels and we lift identities and let people know, hey, this is Christine. The possibilities are endless for her. This is Ernesto. He'll be a world changer one day. This is Adriana. Watch what she does in the next 10 years. That lifts capacity. That lifts our ideas about ourselves and who we can be and what we can do and the impact that we can make in this world. You know, you guys are in school and man, I don't want to get emotional. All growing up, my dad was the opposite of the type of dad that any of you would ever want. Abusive in nearly every way. And I remember I didn't talk to him for 23 years. And I could still remember all throughout my incarceration, his words and the impact that they had on my identity. I remember, stop being an effing idiot. Come here, you stupid mother effer. I remember, you ain't never gonna be shit. You're not going to college because you're not smart enough. You're not going to the military because you're not disciplined enough. So you better learn how to push that shovel. And though I knew what he was saying to me was wrong and mean-spirited, internally, I believed him and my actions backed it up. My actions backed it up. There wasn't too many possibilities. I didn't think about, like many of you, starting a family, owning a home, going to college and going to UCLA and you know, pursuing my career. I can never remember those types of thoughts. But the thoughts that I did know was I wasn't gonna be able to do much, but I can make quick money selling dope. So yeah, that's what I'll do, right? And I remember, you know, the results were a life sentence of that type of thinking, those types of beliefs about myself. And I remember my cellie, who was in college, one of the first guys that I knew going to college. A cellie is like your roommate in a cell in prison, right? So he asked me, hey, why don't you take this college course? You're always reading. I had began to change my life 4 years earlier, and that was one of the desires of my heart, was to go to college. I always longed to be a teacher. I love teachers. I loved teachers when I was in school. And I said, I don't think I could do it. And he said, why not? What are you talking about? You're always reading books. And I said, I don't know. I just, and I trusted him enough to tell him, I just don't think I'm smart enough. I don't think I can do it. So, you know, you all probably take 4 or 5 classes at a time. My first college class, my first semester, I only took 1 class and I applied myself. I studied like 3 hours a day because I thought I was going to fail because I had label and identity that I eventually, even out of my awareness, believed about myself. And then I got an A. And this isn't no prison college. This is legitimate accredited college. But I thought, my first thought was, is this a legit college? Like, what happened here? I even did the extra credit and I got 104.7. And I thought, okay, well, is this legit? Yeah, it's legit. Okay, so next semester, you think I take 2 or 3 classes? I didn't. I only took 1 class again. And I know introduction to financial management. And I got an A again. It's like a 98%. Studied 3 hours a day. And then I thought, man, maybe this is one of those paper mills or something. I got to do a little more investigation here. Something's not right here. It couldn't have possibly been that I was smart. Next semester, 1 class again, and I got another A. And you know, I'm not ashamed, but I'm sad to tell you that it took me 5 years, 5.5 years to get my AA degree. but I'm proud to tell you this. I started taking 2, and then I started taking 3. And for my A degree, I never took more than 3. But after the 10th A, something powerful happened in myself. I said, all the stuff that I had been told was a lie about who I was. None of it was true. And I believed it, and I wasn't going to believe it anymore. And I made a commitment that night that I was going to get that AA degree with a 4.0. I was going to get as many A's as possible in a row. A little bit was some resentment to my dad. One day I'm going to show you those 27 A's in a row or whatever. I'm going to show you I'm smart, but I got off of that and let that go. And but I felt like I had to prove that I was somebody else other than who you thought I was. And now I'm not trying to prove that to people anymore. I'm just going to be. And if they accept me, they do. If they don't, they don't. That's on them. It says more about them than it does about me. I made a commitment to get 10 more A's in a row, started believing in myself, realized it's not about my ability, but about my willingness. The ability is there. And I just became willing. And I eventually got the AA with a 4.0, became the valedictorian, became a state certified alcohol and drug counselor, took another 8 classes in alcohol and drug counseling. And then I started my bachelor's degree, and I kept that streak going, and I graduated cum laude with a 3.82. And now I got a 3.63 with my MBA and a few classes to go. And that's what happens when you shift that labels. So be mindful when you put a label on someone. It causes a lot of harm. Causes a lot of harm. And I'm sure there's some of you here who've experienced that harm by being labeled in some way. But it tells me that you're in college. It tells me that you chose to believe otherwise. So I want to encourage you, don't identify in that way, and think about the impact that it has on other people, negative or positive. I want to encourage you to interrupt those conversations and have those conversations with others about using people-centered language, because it does dehumanize and limits who you can be and who they can be. I wrote down, I'll put them in the chat, a few things that I wrote down when meditating upon it today. I put a person's identity and self-image is closely linked. A person's identity and self-image is closely linked to the language they and others use to describe them. A person's actions will resemble their identity. And so today I fight against any identity that other people want to put on me. And I still hear it at times. I still get it at times, even from my own family members. You know, I was a meth user at one time. I was a heroin user at one time. I nearly died of a heroin overdose. I drank as much alcohol as I could every time I drank. And today, June will be 22 years in sobriety. And there are still some family members, like, you know, I've been out for 2 years and 11 months, and there's still a few family members who think, like, just wait till he gets off parole. He's going to get back after it again, you know. And, you know, it just says more about them than it does about me and where they're at in this world. And I choose to have compassion and empathy for them, because somewhere along the way, they developed that belief system that's flawed. You know, so how people live their lives will always be in direct correlation to how they occur to themselves. I believe that. I really believe that. And the way we occur to ourselves arises in language. Think about the language that you use about yourself. You know, there's people that get master's degrees and they still don't know what they do. I think a lot of that is because of the language they use to describe their own selves. Using people-centered language will transform how we occur to ourselves, how we occur to others, and using people-centered language will transform how other people occur to you, right? Maybe before this call, you thought some Mexican with a bald head with 25 to life is somebody that I wouldn't necessarily want to be friends with, or I need to be cautious of. There's a lot of people that don't feel that way. I have a lot of great friends. I'm a very loving person. emotional person. And tomorrow I'll release my 46th podcast, and you ought to see me on the back end of a website today. I learned because I don't believe in the ceilings anymore that other people put on me of who I can be and what I can do. So just remember, I'll close with this. I don't know if I went over time or not, but a whole new world of possibilities opens up. A whole new world of possibilities open up when we use people-centered language versus dehumanizing language that limits people. And maybe you weren't aware of the harm before today that it could cause. Well, today you may have gotten a little bit of awareness. It's more important than you think, and you're more powerful than you think. So I just want to encourage you all, continue to dream after your goals, and you'll realize one day, whatever, with that perspective that I'm offering, whatever the ceiling of who you thought you could be or what you could do is probably far, far beyond, miles ahead, miles higher than what you could have imagined. And so that's what allowed me to go to the Capitol now and speak 5 different times before the Senate, the Assembly, press conferences. And I'm happy to say, with the Initiate Justice, it had nothing to do with me, but I was happy to be work with them. That the laws passed, and within the organization I work for, 2 other laws passed. And that's something that my limited thinking didn't allow me to believe in at one time, but now I do. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you so much for sharing, Richard. That was so powerful. And I think kind of drives home the point we made earlier that personal stories and personal experiences really do impact how you get your point across, how you draw people in and help people relate to what's being shared. So I really appreciate you for being here today.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
thank you so much, Richard. And sorry, Emily, just real quick, I just want to take a moment and just thank you for your vulnerability. And thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for the inspiration that you just poured into us, into this space, and into our community. Once again, you are powerful. You are a leader, and we appreciate you, Richard.
Thank you. When it comes to IJ, I'll always give you guys my heart. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I know the impact.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're gonna get back into it here. And we're gonna kind of shift the focus now from into talking about how person-centered language can be used and is applicable outside of incarceration, but also accounts for people who are battling mental illness, people who are experiencing homelessness, people who might be physically or intellectually disabled. So here we can see there's some kind of commonly used phrases that people throw around, such as, they're an addict, they're so crazy, they're so schizophrenic, they're so bipolar, they're homeless, they're so ADHD, they're autistic. And so on the other side are some examples and suggestions of ways that you can kind of change that language of a person who struggles with a substance abuse disorder, someone who has a mental health disorder, such as depression or anxiety or schizophrenia, someone who is experiencing homelessness or is without housing, someone who has an intellectual disability, someone who has autism. So to understand how this translates, I have a helpful video on the next slide that I want to share with you. So we're going to play that right now.
What is person-first language? Person-first language puts the person ahead of any disability identifier, meaning a person who has autism or a person with an intellectual disability. Why is this important? A person with a disability is a person first. People with disabilities do not want to be seen first and foremost by their disability. It devalues their inherent uniqueness and personhood. Additionally, a person who uses an assistive device is not bound by it. A person who uses a wheelchair, for example, is much freer to move around this world because of their chair. This stems from the social model of disability. A person is disabled by lack of access to their community and environment, not their impairment. Another common model is the medical model, which typically sees the person from a diagnostic point of view. Another common model is the charity model. This posits interventions or policies are done in the best interests of the person with a disability without including them or their experiences in the decision-making process. Also, using terms such as special, mentally retarded, handicapped are disrespectful and possibly hurtful. Always ask the person how they choose to identify, but default to person-first language if you don't know.
Okay, so hopefully that video was helpful. I want to make note for that from this video that these are all suggestions, and ultimately there's various ways that people want to be referred to, and it's completely okay to just ask someone how they like to be identified. But overall, I think this video really emphasizes that person-first language makes a huge difference in giving back the agency, dignity, and power to all people, and especially system-impacted people. So I hope that gave you kind of another way of looking at person-centered language. And it's a reminder that we are all human despite the labels that society has placed on us and on specific communities of people. And just a reminder that it's easy to slip up and to use harmful words that we're kind of accustomed to using. But the goal that I personally have for myself is to be more mindful of the words that I say when referring to anyone in my life, and being more inclusive and loving and kind towards others in all situations. And it's okay to make mistakes, and there's just kind of, keeping yourself accountable, and also keeping others accountable. If you're going to correct someone else, be kind in the way you do it, but it's good to correct other people and be open to being corrected yourself. And overall, just kind of practice speaking in this way in all situations, regardless of who you're talking to, or even if you're by yourself, because it really truly does change your perspective on the world and the way that other people think of you. So I'm going to pass it over to Olivia now, but I appreciate you all for listening. And I hope this was helpful.
Hello. So this slide is about preparing for public speaking, Zoom versus in person. And when you're public speaking or having a speech over Zoom, you definitely want to be presenting in a quiet space, so not a coffee shop or a public area unless you think that it will be quiet enough. A plain background is preferable. You don't want to have anything distracting in the background. You want to dress professionally. With Zoom, you only have to do it on top, which is nice. And then lastly, you want to try and have as few distractions as possible. And then presenting in person, you want to dress fully professionally. Be aware of your body language, because how you're standing has a big impact. If you're crossing your arms, you probably want to be using them to speak or have them at your side. But crossing your arms gives off kind of a closed off and not as opening friendly vibe. And then on the next slide, this one is about dealing with nerves. Nerves are completely normal. Everyone has nerves, and dealing with them. The first 3 points I have on this slide are mainly about establishing confidence. And I believe that mastering your topic and organizing your key points are the first steps to kind of achieving that confidence when public speaking. And the last step is to just practice your material over and over. You can practice in a mirror, you can record yourself, you could ask a friend to sit with you and practice with them. But the more you practice, the more comfortable you're going to feel when you actually are giving the presentation in front of a bigger crowd. A couple other options for kind of relieving stress before public speaking are, and we have a couple videos attached, but taking a deep breath just kind of to slow your heart rate down and get you in a more relaxed state so you're not as tense, you're not talking too fast, will definitely take your nerves down a little bit. And Daisy, if you would like to play the box breathing relaxation technique, this is a really good way.
There are times when
slow
we
down
all
your heart rate.
experience feelings of stress or anxiety. In these moments, you can use your breath to help calm those feelings. Box breathing is a simple relaxation technique that can help you reset your breath and return to its normal rhythm. You can do it anywhere, anytime. Box breathing can help reduce stress and improve mood. It can also help with controlling and managing emotions. It's very easy to learn. Imagine breathing around a box. Inhale as you visualize going up one side of the box, gradually filling your lungs with air. When you reach the top, hold your breath for 1 to 5 seconds as you picture going across the top of the box. Exhale gradually as you imagine traveling down the other side of the box. Pause again for 1 to 5 seconds as you go along the bottom of the box. Then repeat. This can be done 7 to 10 times in a row, focusing on the breath. If you can do it sitting down with your feet grounded, that will help too. But really, it can be done anywhere. Box breathing has physiological and psychological benefits. Physiologically, it regulates breath, increases oxygen to the lungs, and can help reduce blood pressure and lower heart rate. Box breathing can help psychologically by providing focus to your breath and removing attention from the things that are causing feelings of stress and anxiety. The repetition of box breathing can also help reduce stress. So, in moments when feelings of stress and anxiety are overwhelming, remember box breathing and the power of your breath as a simple way to relax and breathe a bit easier.
So the box breathing is a really good for relaxation and focus. And then we also have another video, the 5-4-3-2-1 method, which is a grounding exercise, which will also bring you focus for your presentation so that your thoughts can just be on the point you want to get across.
The 5-4-3-2-1 method is a grounding exercise that can help you stay in the moment and avoid negative thinking and worry. You can do this exercise anywhere, at home, at school, in the car, or even in the middle of a crowd. You can do it sitting, standing, or laying down. Counting down from 5, use your senses to list things around you. Make an effort to notice details about these things. This is how to do it. Start by breathing deeply in through your nose and out through your mouth. Then slowly look at your surroundings. Find 5 things that you can see around you. Maybe you see a colorful poster on the wall, the spider web on the bookshelf, the lamp on the nightstand with the red shade. the cat sleeping peacefully on the chair, the cactus on the dresser that has finally bloomed. Then list 4 things that you can touch. The warm mug in your hands, the soft comforter on the bed, the denim of your jeans, the scratchy carpet under your feet. Next, listen for 3 things you can hear. Maybe the ticking of a clock, the quiet hum of your computer, the sound of traffic from outside. Now try to find 2 things that you can smell. The tea in your mug, the clean scent of your clothes. Finally, list 1 emotion that you feel. This is a way to ground yourself so you can feel present in the moment and in control of your surroundings. Now you try.
I really like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method because it kind of makes you aware of all your senses and brings you to the present moment, which is really good before presenting because we don't want to be nervous about people's reactions or thinking about things in the past. We want to be focused right on that moment and what's in front of us and what we want our audience to take away from our presentation. And then another way to deal with nerves. Oh, I'm so sorry, Daisy. Would you mind going back? Thank you. Is to visualize success. And this kind of goes hand in hand with what Emily and Richard were talking about, how we talk about ourselves or what we think is going to happen. There is some truth to that, that it will. And so going into a presentation, thinking the worst about what's going to happen is probably not going to do you any good. As long as you have mastered your topic, organize key points, and practice a lot, you're good to go. And you have every reason to be confident in your speech. Another thing to think about is to focus on the material, not the audience. You don't want to be anticipating the audience's reaction. You want to be just focused on the material you want to deliver. And then also don't be afraid of a moment of silence. It's okay if you got a little off track and you need a second to gather yourself and bring the presentation back on point. Just take as much time as you need. As I said on the last slide, confidence is key. When you are talking, it's important to remember not to talk too fast. Talking too fast can make it difficult for the audience to understand. So remember to slow down while you are talking. Energy is really important too. The more enthusiastic you are, the more the audience will want to listen. Chances are if you are talking about something and it sounds like you don't care at all, the audience probably won't care at all either. And stay engaged. Be aware of the audience and their reactions, and don't be afraid to interact with them. Are there any questions on the last few slides? We can take a little break here and I can answer them. Or we can move on to the next slide if there are no questions. And we are actually going to go into breakout rooms again. And this time, we're going to ask you guys to present your argument from before the last breakout room to your partner. Using what you've learned, let your confidence show, and you're going to give each other feedback.
Thank you, Olivia. And breakout rooms are opening, so please join your breakout room, practice what you've learned in the past hour and 15 minutes or so, and we will come back in about 10 minutes. So at about 8:53, we'll come back and see how that went for everybody.
Okay, great. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully those breakout rooms were productive and helpful and trying to apply some of the stuff that we were learning today. I just want to thank all of you for being here with us tonight and leave a space if anyone has any final questions or thoughts to put them in the chat or unmute yourself. But on behalf of Sophania and Olivia and I just want to say thank you so much for all being here and listening. And hopefully you learned some things. I know I learned a lot from Richard and from all of your comments in the chat, and I really appreciate learning alongside of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Zephania, Olivia, Richard. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. Any final thoughts from anyone? If not, I would just like to really just extend tremendous gratitude to our students who courageously put this together, led this project, organized this webinar, and showed up here today with compassion and investment in this opportunity. Also, Richard, thank you for being authentic, being genuine, and using your experiences to share your power with the rest of us. That's inspiring, and we're extremely grateful for you. And I am just on behalf of Initiate Justice, we're grateful for our partnership with the UCLA Center for Community Engagement and look forward to more of these webinars for all of you. Tavo, I see that you have a question, so I want to give you space for questions, comment, or feedback.
Yeah, could this video be broadcasted inside? So the UCLA students, I mean, this might seem like a project, like I don't know what the side project's called, like a side project, but this is massive for a lot of us that were inside, who got adopted this lingo, even out here, how to communicate. It's a big thing for a lot of us. Yeah, so thank you.
I could help you out with that.
Yeah, thank you, Tavo. And thank you, Richard. Yeah, I think there's some tremendous benefit to this being shared with our friends, family, brothers, sisters, and our community members that are still incarcerated and inside as they, tread that journey home soon. And so again, just thank you, everyone. Thank you for being on this call with us, for taking the time to spend an hour and a half with us this evening. I do just want to share a couple of upcoming events, one in particular, or announcements. One, our member meeting is tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. And that's our member meeting. We will be announcing, our policy team will be announcing our 2022 bills that we are co-sponsoring and that we will be advocating for throughout the remainder of the year. We will also be joined by the Deputy Director of CURB, Californians United for a Responsible Budget, to talk about why it's important that we follow the money, right? Why is it important that we advocate for how our tax dollars are used and what our state budget looks like? And you can register for that meeting or any other member meeting on the first Wednesday of each month at tinyurl.com/IJ monthly. And you can get the Zoom link. We hope to see some of you there tomorrow night. Also, our Abolition is for Everybody podcast launched season 2 today. So definitely take some time to explore and connect with us via our podcast. 2 new co-hosts, well, not new to Initiate Justice necessarily, but new co-hosts for this season. So excited for you all to get to know Adam and Crystal. And then also just want to let you all know that you can view our full calendar of events at initiatejustice.org/calendar for any other upcoming meetings, events, webinars, things of that nature. Thank you, Emily, Zafania, and Olivia. Thank you, Richard, my co-host. Thank you, Daisy. Thank you to every single one of you that are here tonight. And I hope everyone has a great night. I know, Theodore, you have your hand raised, but just want to say good night and much appreciation to each one of you.